This is Signal and Noise, bringing clarity to data, tech, and AI.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Signal and Noise. This is Brett House. I'm joined by my co-host, Rio Longacre.
Hey there.
And today we are super excited to have Jennifer Borchardt, whose name I previously completely butchered. Is a northern German name, is what I learned. On our show, she's a new executive voice on Signal and Noise, a UX leader who spent her career at the intersection of design, technology, and real-world user behavior, helping organizations make sense of increasingly complex digital and AI systems, just the types of topics we like to get deep into on Signal and Noise. And so, Jennifer, welcome to the show. Thrilled to have you.
Thank you. So happy to be here. I think today's going to be fun.
Yeah, so we're going to get really wonky, and I'll try to hang in there. I'm running low on the mental horsepower at the end of the day on Friday. We're East Coast.
That's what Red Bull is for.
Yeah, Rio is taking his high vitamin B, high caffeine energy drinks.
Well, it's snowing outside,
and it's snowing outside. But just so I'll finish my intro, and then Jennifer, you can introduce yourself. So you were an UX leader. You spent your career at places like Slalom Consulting. That's where you met Rio and Drew Burdick, who was on our show. A previous guest, who's a UX expert. So you've sort of made your name in UX. You've worked with other very large organizations. And some of them are blanking on me right now.
Wells Fargo, US Bank.
US Bank.
Melody, Goldman Sachs, worked for Publicis Sapient.
Wells Fargo, right?
Wells Fargo, yes. Yes.
And you've been entirely involved in sort of UX and digital transformation, right? On thinking deeply about what this means. And it looks like you've gotten really involved in AI and consulting for AI and its impact on work.
Yes.
Which is a hot topic in the industry right now. And we are going to be looking at a report that just came out by OpenAI called Industrial Policy for the Intelligence Age, Ideas to Keep People First. It's a fascinating report. And Jennifer, you mentioned also that who came out with the second report?
Stanford, their 2026 AI report.
Yeah.
And that one just came out. It's hot off the presses, right?
Yes, which is a counterbalance to OpenAI's paper, which incidentally, I think the title of the AI paper is not dissimilar from the Unabomber Manifesto. I tried to look that up before this podcast.
Interesting. Well, it's a jarring document for those who have not read it. But it's a good read. I've not read a Stanford one yet. I'm excited to read that. So I'd love if you could maybe just tell a little bit about your background, and Brett hasn't touched on, then I can maybe touch on a little, add a little color to what we want to go into today about this topic.
Okay. Well, I started my career I'm a med school dropout, hitchhiked to San Francisco and started my career at a little startup. I had a little bit of a detour, but started my career really at a little tiny startup called E-Trade, where I learned all about financial services and loved financial services. And by that point, I had experience building early websites and monetizing user experience. And at that point, this is a very long time ago, if you were in UX wasn't even a term, right? You were a UXer, you were a web designer, but
you're a graphic designer or a web designer, right?
Yeah. And by the way, I have no creative training at all. As I said, throughout my very regulated career, I have a creative job, but really my biggest areas of creativity are in taxation and accounting.
Wow.
Staying within the law.
Yeah.
But I worked at E-Trade as a web producer, which was a designer, content strategist, project manager, front-end developer. And I actually had the opportunity through that job to work all over the world. I lived in some really amazing countries, including Berlin, which is where my last name is from. So the legend goes. After that, after I spent many years at what felt like many years at E-Trade, I came back stateside and worked for Wells Fargo in San Francisco, where I was a information architect / UX designer / UI designer / whatever is
And
needed.
that was a new profession, like kind of like, or discipline back around that time, like
Yes.
IAs, right?
Yes. And it was right around that time that I realized, oh, wait, I'm actually using my degree. I have an undergrad degree in neuroscience and also studied economics and public health
Yeah,
and all
your
of that
educational
stuff.
background makes me wonder what I was doing in high school. I'm in Harvard, MIT, Oberlin, Stanford. I mean, you throw Princeton in there if you really want to. But tell
Go
me a little,
Tiger.
like that's pretty fascinating. There's some pretty high profile schools in that list.
Yeah. Education has always been very important to me. And I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've had, and especially to Wells Fargo and US Bank for paying for my graduate education.
Nice.
Yeah, nothing like tuition reimbursement, but I was actually going to grad school full time while I was working full time at Wells Fargo, which was such a great experience. I think that the spirit the spirit that led me to do that, to basically give up my entire life for a number of years so I could work at Wells Fargo right at the time that they acquired Wachovia Securities, or as acquired Wachovia, and I was one of the leads to manage the integration of their investment and wealth management business. It was when I started graduate school. And that's what introduced me to Charlotte all the way back in 2008. So
Okay, it's all
while
making
the
sense
financial
now.
crisis was crisising, I had a super interesting and meaty and exciting role, hel- bringing two very very big businesses together and caring for the user experience and design part of it, which was wonderful. It was hard work and it was worthwhile work, and not a lot of people would say this, but I actually appreciated being part of a merger like that. Um,
Yeah, because you
and
can see the human challenges, the organizational challenges, not just the
yeah, and
systems integration.
I
But
think the human ones are the bigger than the
yeah,
technology or systems ones.
well, so I would say more important, because that is the human part is what's overlooked. It's also the most invisible, so you can't really fault someone for not seeing it, but it's definitely there. You can feel it, and it is there. Any any merger, any technology integration, any process improvement is not going to be successful or sustainable unless you care for the human part of it.
yeah, and break
And
down
Well,
break down the silos and the
yeah,
fiefdoms.
I think it's usually overlooked, right? Which is why it becomes a singular point of failure in a lot of these mergers. That's
yes,
overlooked. I think that's the case. So it's interesting. See, that's how you got to Charlotte. Okay, makes sense. And
well,
that's how you met. Did
no,
you met?
that's how I was introduced to Charlotte. What got me to Charlotte is many, many years later, fast forward to 2020, even before the
It's
pandemic.
pre-pandemic.
It
Okay.
was actually pre-pandemic, right? So end of 2019 and beginning of 2020. I was like, you know what? San Francisco's changed a little too much. I'm ready for something else, but I'm not going to move just anywhere. Where shall I move? And as someone who is devoted to the ones and the zeros of it all, I spend a considerable amount of time, over a year, creating a data model to help me decide where am I going to move to. And I did it in Excel.
Yeah,
Now, if I was
you did
doing
this before. It was a lot easier within
if
Hermes or
I had Claude
OpenClaw
for
or
Excel,
Claude.
my bags would be packed tonight. No, but actually, what came up is that I could live pretty much anywhere in the world, and that is another story. And I've lived a lot of places. So number one was Raleigh, North Carolina. Number two was actually Charlotte, North Carolina, but not a statistically significant difference. And I said, you know what? I know Charlotte. Charlotte has a better airport, number of direct flights from
Yeah,
the airport.
Raleigh's hard to get to. Yeah, that's true.
Yes, and
Yeah.
and I really do not like driving.
And
So
we were talking before the episode. It's a small town compared to places like Berlin that you've lived, and
yes,
even San
Berlin and
Francisco
Johannesburg
and
and
Johannesburg.
London and New York and San Francisco. Let's not forget that. And I'm just very much a city person, even though I grew up in a very, very small town. I'm glad that I got to live on all ends of existence. But anyhow, I had decided to move to Charlotte. Thank you, Excel. Thank you, data model. And I have all of these parameters. Where am I going to move to? And then I stumbled upon Top Golf. And now I'm not a golfer, by the way. And I promise you this is relevant. I realized that Charlotte was the only city in the US that had 2 Top Golfs, except for Dallas, where Top Golf is headquartered. And a lot of the metrics that they used to decide where they were going to open their locations aligned with what I was looking for. And so, hey, 2 Top Golfs, that means I'm gonna load up my cats, get on a plane, and go to Charlotte.
That's really cool. I really like Charlotte. So I started going a lot when in my previous work. With big office, we worked. I mean, for the audience, we actually crossed paths at Slalom for a couple of years, and you were on Drew Burdick's team, and Drew was a guest of the pod. Drew's great, and I actually was introduced to Drew through Ronnie Batista, whom you know, and Ronnie is like an OG in the design world. He's like professor at Rutgers. He runs the Chubb Design Lab in Jersey City. And Ronnie is amazing. Ronnie and I worked together for a long time. So I reached out to Ronnie initially about being on the pod. And he was like, listen, that's not really not my thing, but I know who you should talk to. And he gave me your name, Jennifer. So I'm really glad he did.
Okay.
And UX world is not a big world, right? End of the day, right?
No.
Everyone's just 1 degree of separation away. And I think the timing is great of this because I don't think it's coincidental that with your UX background, and I'm not a designer either, right? But I've worked with UX and design leaders for years and years and years. I used to run pretty big design teams, but I think it's no coincidence, having worked with many designers, that like some of the people at the forefront of AI actually have a design background, whether it's design strategy, design thinking, or actually were a designer. I think it's no coincidence. And maybe we can get into it a little bit because you really, like, we've gone to the point where, and we've been talking about AI as a tool, right? Something that makes people's work more efficient, help teams work faster. We've talked about in this podcast a lot about how we can prototype things and get things done with vibe coding and vibe designing up in like a couple of days. It would have taken weeks. But like the bigger picture, it's not just a tool. It's actually like changing how everyone does work. It's starting to change what work actually is. And that paper that Brett, you referenced that came out from OpenAI, it talks about like, how is this going to change society? If it's changing work, if it's redistributing, if it's creating a ton of wealth, but redistributing it to a smaller amount of people, if it's changing work, maybe even eliminating some jobs. I don't know if there's too much evidence about that. We can get into it, but I think there's some. Like, what does this mean for society? And it really, the crux of the paper was, we cannot be looking at incremental change to something that's if this is the next industrial revolution, we should be looking at wholesale changes to the way we run our societies, where governments potentially even operate. So that's what the white paper, I guess you would call it, was proposing. And that's really what we wanted to talk about today. So it's a really cool topic. And I think that, coming with your unique background, like we're thrilled to hear what you have to say. Brett, I don't know if you want to kick off the first question, or Jennifer, if you want to respond to it, let's go.
Yeah, so maybe so back to that paper and the idea around OpenAI central claim, and Jennifer, tell me if this is correct, is that super intelligent AI is arriving fast enough and with enough upside and enough disruption that market adaptation, sort of commercial adaptation or capitalist adaptation, won't be enough, that you need to institutionalize almost a new deal for this new AI sort of tech-driven age, which is interesting. And they also mention how
this is from the OpenAI paper, right?
Yeah, and this is the OpenAI paper. It's called just Industrial Policy for the Intelligence Age: Ideas to Keep People First. And I didn't read the Stanford paper that you referenced, but it's interesting that this call is coming from OpenAI, because one of the primary parts of the thesis is that it shouldn't be concentrated in the hand of a few companies, which is ironic considering that OpenAI is writing it.
They're one of the frontier models, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but what were your kind of key takeaways in terms of what this paper's thinking about in proposing?
I mean, I think it's actually a proposal for a new world order, and OpenAI is finally saying out loud, but I think a lot of people have been whispering about, that the labor-based economy is incompatible with AGI. And by publishing this paper when they did, OpenAI is effectively positioning themselves at the center of this public-private partnership that they're proposing. And they're also effectively attempting to wedge themselves and co-author the regulations that are going to govern AI and govern themselves. And the Stanford paper, the 2026 Stanford AI Index, it actually, I think, provides a counterbalance to OpenAI's paper. OpenAI talks about this sweeping policy. It really does speak in generalities, but not enough detail for my taste. Whereas Stanford highlights what they called the jagged frontier. It's this.
What do they mean by that?
So while AI can solve these very complex, sticky problems like PhD level physics, it still cannot reliably read an analog clock. And that's a reliability gap, right? And this is a friction. I think this is really important because this is the friction that OpenAI ignores. It's looking here while, say, willfully ignoring what's over there. I also think that not just the New World Order. It's kind of a manifesto for a post-labor economy. And this is something which is starting to people started to talk about a few years ago with UBI, Universal Basic Income, which incidentally OpenAI did not mention specifically. OpenAI is signaling that the social contract that is centering taxes and the social contract that's centered on payroll taxes, like work-based taxes and labor-based productivity, is or will soon be obsolete. And instead, moving to capital-based taxation in a public wealth fund that is specifically not UBI. By doing this, they're admitting that they expect automation to completely decapitate traditional revenue streams. And this is kind of like a radical restructuring of society disguised as an innocent policy paper.
Yeah. This is what I thought was interesting because basically they're saying it's going to have massive productivity increases and an economic upside, right? For, in the aggregate, but this is going to displace jobs in industries. This is going to concentrate wealth and power in a few hands, and it'll probably, like, at the same time, introduce some new risks. I mean, it seemed to me like that. That's really what it was saying, and I felt that was kind of based on, those are possibilities. I mean, certainly if some jobs will be eliminated. I mean, like you think about like when computers came out, certain jobs were eliminated, right? When there used to be switchboard operators, right? I mean, those jobs disappeared, but a lot of more jobs were created by these technologies, right? Graphic design didn't exist. Illustration did, but graphic design didn't even exist like 35 years ago. So I don't know. I think it felt like it was making some assumptions to me, to be devil's advocate, that are certainly likely, right? But I don't know if like there's consensus that that it will eliminate more jobs than it'll create.
Yeah,
in the short term, at least.
It doesn't really get into that. And actually across the two papers, across OpenAI's and Stanford's papers, the only explicit mention of job loss is Stanford's paper said that 20% of junior developer jobs have gone away. The implicit understanding that those jobs are not coming back.
So they had numbers to back that up, like 20% already gone.
The Stanford paper did. And having spent so much beginning my career in Silicon Valley, something I heard all the time that they're still saying, they even say it here in Charlotte, move fast and break things. But this, I believe that this paper marks a shift from move fast and break things to collaborate with the state to build the moat. That is a fundamental shift.
I think that was another thing about the paper that I did have some questions about too, right? Like they were claiming, it is going to concentrate power and wealth in the hands of a few, which, okay, that's certainly likely, right? But I think that overlooks my personal belief is over time, and I don't mean a lot of time, over the next, let's say 3 to 5 years, I think AI will be commoditized. I think token prices will collapse, right?
Yes.
And I do think instead of AI wealth and power being concentrated in the hands of a few who, like, OpenAI, Google, right? The few, right? The few, Anthropic, the few that own these frontier models. I think what we're going to see instead is regular companies adopting AI to to make their businesses more profitable, more efficient, and it'll increase productivity everywhere. And I
Yeah.
think AI will become more commoditized. That's just, I don't know. So I don't think
Yeah.
we'll be as concentrated as these alarmists are saying, but I could be wrong.
Well, no, and I think there's a democratization in usage, right? In some of the highly technical work, to your point about developer jobs going away. I was just talking to a startup founder
Mhm.
from Northwestern who's in San Francisco, starting his own company. He majored in computer science. And I was like, how ironic that was the job, the safe job that was
Right.
not going to be eliminated. But to me, I mean, I don't think it's 3 to 5 years for frontier models to be commoditized. I think they're being commoditized right now, and I'm
Yeah.
experiencing it. I just installed Hermes or Hermes or Hermes as like a super agent on my machine, and
It's running locally, right, Brett?
yeah, it's running locally on my machine, and it runs through either I have two frontier models. I've got Claude, both coding and general LLM cowork, and GPT Pro with Codex.
Mhm.
But I could bring in any model at all, and then this super agent is basically prioritizing which model to use for what. So there is
Mhm.
specialization, but I'm actually relying more on the orchestration and the management of multiple models, which to me suggests that they are being more or less commoditized, and you're relying on them for specialized compute, more or less.
Yeah. I definitely think that specialization is going away. Specialization for human beings is going away. And as workers, we are entering the age of the hyphenate. Maybe this is what it is from now on. Like you guys said,
The hyphenate, define that though.
the hyphenate means you're not just a designer, you're not
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
developer.
That's
You
yeah,
are
interesting.
a technology minded strategist. You are
yeah,
a
yeah.
human centered
There's a
technologist.
totally there's a job that I was just reading about the other day. It was like the rise of the marketing engineer.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So that's a
strategy
technically
athlete.
astute builder, almost like a product engineer type, but that is leveraging those capabilities for marketing related outcomes,
Yes,
which I thought was interesting.
it's missing some. So there is immense potential and opportunity. It is there, no question. It's super exciting, but without without a lot of, we'll say, support, that opportunity I don't believe is available to everyone. It is available to people who already have expertise. So people like us, the Gen
Yeah.
Xers and the older millennials. I would say that they're probably in the strongest position right now because we've had the opportunity to develop judgment and expertise and
And
critical thinking.
systems thinking and
Yes.
strategic thinking. Rio and I talk
System,
about this on the show all the time,
yes.
right? Where you're
Systems
bringing that
thinking.
knowledge to be able to conduct. You're not just a violin player, which is
Yes.
specialization. You're the conductor of an entire orchestra, but you got to know what the different parts are and how they fit together as a
Yes.
whole, right?
Understanding the system, the holistic experience, and it isn't just what does good look like, because I think AI is creating things that look good. I don't think they actually are architecturally and have architectural integrity. They look good. We know what excellent looks like. We know what it feels like. We know how to describe it while we're still while prompting is still a thing. And I don't think that even prompting is going to be a skill we're going to need forever. As long as we can describe what does excellent look like, we can orchestrate technology. We can orchestrate these agents. We can describe what the ideal state is going to be, and we can continue to iterate on it.
Yeah.
It's
Well, and
funny. I
this,
always thought prompt engineering was such a dumb term, right? So I
I
agree
knew
with
it
you.
was going
Like,
to last 30
yeah,
seconds.
yeah. There's
yeah,
the prompt, but there's all the memory system that you're
yeah.
building. That's what I'm learning. Like building an agent, like you're almost like birthing a child in a way. It's a strange analogy because you're literally building a memory system and you're training it with those markdown files, right? And it's not the prompt that trains it on what to do, what not to do. And I do this for everything from narrative writing to technical writing to proposal building, and I give it these extensive instructions. It's almost like the semantic layer, Rio,
Mhm.
that we talked about in terms of you putting that on top of it as a middleware on top of a data infrastructure to tell the agents how to interpret the data, you're sort of doing the same thing for your own personal or work agents, right? You're giving them the
Well,
context
Brett,
and the rules of the road.
I think that's it. I think what you're referring to hits the nail on the head. Like, it's the scaffolding, right? So like, if you look at like the unbundling of work, I know it's a topic we wanted to cover today, because I
Yeah.
mean, unbundling work, the premise here is AI does certain things. It can't do your whole job, but it can do certain things in your job really well, probably much better than you, right? It can, right?
Mhm.
Or at least faster and more efficiently. So if it's doing certain things better, work kind of breaks apart, but you need the scaffolding to know, okay, how do you stitch together these things that these agents or these large language models can do? How do I tell them what to do, guide them, have that map that I can lay them on top of, and then get a good final product out of that actually makes any sense. I think that's interesting. And I don't know, what's your thought, Jennifer, about how that
Well,
impacts work and
that's also
people?
higher order work, right?
Yeah.
That is not something an entry-level person knows how to do. They don't know how to orchestrate. That is something you get with experience, by having the opportunity to make a lot of mistakes, learn from it, continue to iterate. That is why people who are just entering the workforce, people who are making career changes by choice or not by choice, are at a significant disadvantage. And even people who are already pretty good at what they do right now, we will arguably need fewer of them. So then what happens to the people who haven't had the opportunity to develop those skills? There
Yep.
needs to be something that exists. And honestly, I don't even think that giving people the resources to meet their basic needs is even going to be enough.
Yeah.
Work is not just money. Work is meaning and
Purpose.
purpose and
Yeah.
place and identity. And once you lose all of those other things, even if your material needs are met, you have a broken society full of broken people. And how do you care for that? That is the very important and very human part of this, that Stanford, OpenAI, really none of these technology minded companies are really thinking about.
Well, in
Whereas-
the paper, they claim they want more policy, right? And the question is sort of, where does that policy come from? They sort of reframed
Well, in
Yeah.
paper from them, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not an
It's a public
it's like,
partnership, right?
yeah, they say it's sort of an infrastructure and distribution, and I think distribution probably infers distribution across society, across people. It's not just a technology problem.
Yes.
And so knowing how slowly governments in the systems that power governments shift and adapt to technology change, certainly
Mhm.
not at the speed of how technology is sort of accelerating today. How, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, is it coming from the government? Because you can't have the ones that you're regulating can't do the regulation.
Yes, but that's actually what OpenAI, I think, is, if not explicitly, implicitly hoping for.
Yeah.
I I think that this is something that is so big and so pervasive that it is everyone needs to be involved somehow. It's not just going to come from government. It's not just going to come from private enterprise. It's not just going to come from individuals, because that wouldn't be fair. Have an individual decide how are you going to be viable in this upside down new system.
It's sort of a warning,
It is. I mean,
right?
it is very much a warning. But I don't think that there's an easy answer, but I'm glad that this came out now, because it starts the conversation. There are some,
Yeah,
there's
I
some,
think I think it's good that it's doing that, right? And it's
yeah,
interesting too. Like in it, they call for some things that, I mean, like, for example, they called for shorter work weeks, portable benefits being tied to, not being employer based. I actually think would be great, right? If we could move away from this system that makes absolutely
yeah,
no sense in this country, where your benefits are tied to your employment, which is really an anachronism based on some decisions we made in the 50s, right?
Yeah,
To
coming from the founder
yeah,
mentality, it's
right.
extremely expensive when you're
yeah.
founding a company to pay for insurance. Jennifer, you know what
Well,
that's about.
what I thought was interesting is that they mentioned using this wealth fund to supplement health insurance. All right. But what they didn't say is using those same funds to create a public single payer healthcare system. I mean,
Well, yeah. So the thing
yeah,
about healthcare, right? I mean, end of the day, healthcare, like if you like the costs in our country, I mean, we can get a whole multiple podcasts about healthcare if we really wanted to, but the costs are so crazy. We pay twice as much as any other developed country in the world per person, right, for healthcare because of the crazy way the system's designed. So it's like, I agree with you. If you're going to tackle, you're going to start throwing money at it. Like I think there probably structurally some things that could be solved that would have a much bigger benefit.
I mean, if not now, when? In times of disarray, in times of chaos, emerge the greatest opportunities. If we're gonna chuck the system, let's take this as an opportunity for all of the innovation, for unprecedented innovation, unprecedented wealth, to truly reimagine something rather than just tweaking these systems that are already in place that we already know and that have very obvious problems.
Yeah, that's the optimist view. I mean, it's also during periods of uncertainty and chaos. It's the shock doctrine, not to
Yeah.
the Naomi Campbell shock doctrine. It's a little progressive left, but the notion is that during periods of chaos, people take advantage and they force policy through when nobody's looking, and that's also the danger and the risk from a policy perspective is that.
Well, so I think that the shock doctrine applies not only to societies and organizations, but also to individuals. When
Yeah.
everything is taken from you and it feels like you had nothing to lose, that is the time where you really innovate and reinvent and are forced to create.
Yeah, it's like it's the abundance mindset, right? Versus like the scarcity mindset of
Well,
just
yeah, a
jump.
lot of people live in a scarcity mindset, and AI is threatening and actually taking away a lot of people's
Well, but here's
livelihoods, uncertainty. It's
well, I think it's
uncertainty.
I think the jury's out whether it's taking away people's livelihoods. I
Well,
mean, I think that
some people, like
yeah,
certainly
but
nobody on this call, but there are some people whose futures are very much more at risk than they were before this.
but here's what like
What's
but
that?
Jennifer, here's what it gets me worried about some of these prescriptions that come out of this, right? Like you look at if the Biden administration had been able to implement its AI policy, which is basically we're going to restrict AI to like 3 hyperscalers with their large language models. That was it. No one else was going to be allowed to develop it. It was going to be highly restricted and locked down. And that would have been a terrible decision in retrospect because they had no idea like this explosion of vertical LLMs and
Yeah.
like locally running LLMs and open source. They would have missed all of that, right? Now,
And
it would have
Mark
happened.
Andreessen was screaming from the rooftops, right, whether you love him or hate him,
Yeah.
about the regulation that was limiting our ability to be competitive in a race that we have no option but to compete and to
Yes.
win. It's the new space age. It's the new, whatever you want to
If
call
it
it.
is a new
Cold
industrial
War.
revolution, right? I
Yeah.
mean, like, like for sure, like we don't want to lose. If it is the industrial revolution, it's a race between us and China. We don't want to lose it because I think that we all agree that we'd probably rather have models created here running the world over models created by a
Elsewhere.
totalitarian regime, right? So,
Yeah.
but I don't know. So, but I agree with you that there is going to be some job displacement. I mean, I don't know how quickly, and will the jobs be created? I mean, what do you think? Will the jobs be created quicker than they'll be eliminated, or not?
I do believe that jobs are going to be created. Jobs are being eliminated, but I don't think that job destruction is going to happen as completely as people think as people are saying it's going to. And I also do not believe that the jobs are going to be created as fast as they need to replace what's being
Yeah. So the job elimination fear, do you
deprecated.
think that's a bit short-termism? I mean, this notion of sort of keeping people first doesn't really mean anything if AI is all about driving
Well,
efficiencies.
I think the question is which people are being kept first, because I don't think it's everyone.
Yeah.
There are a lot of uncomfortable truths and assumptions that I think are going to start becoming spoken. And as someone who's a firm believer in leaning into those uncomfortable conversations,
Yeah.
let's get it out there and talk about it and be the benevolent force that you want to see in the world. And it's going to be additive. It's not just going to be you or me or someone else. It's going to be people acting collectively to help ensure that the benefit is going to be as broad-based as possible. There are organizations that are really really working hard for this. One of which is ASAP, the AI Safety Awareness Project. It's an organization I recently got involved with. They're doing some very important work, and it's super grassroots. It's
Yep.
talking to people who are normally not part of these conversations: students, senior citizens, local policymakers.
Yep.
Just open, not even being prescriptive, but saying, hey, here's what we know right now. We want you to be part of the conversation. What do you think?
Yep.
And helping steward these conversations,
One
hopefully
one
into benevolent policy.
one recommendation I really liked in the report was like giving more people access to AI and AI tools. I thought that
Yes,
was like that made so much sense to me. Thoughts on
I
that?
I agree. Yeah, I mean that's how the benefit is going to be more widespread. And there are still people who even though these tools are available, are not going to have access for one reason or another. We need to care for them too. How do we allow them to still benefit from all of this innovation and discovery and new wealth creation and efficiency and time savings? How do we, in other words, how do we create the tide that raises all boats?
How do
And
you see some of like the changes in like how it's impacting specific roles or jobs or the workforce? Like, how do you like, do you see any differences from this compared to, let's say, any other like industrial revolutions of the past or technology advancements in the past that you think makes this a different, or is it the same?
I think there's a lot of similarities. I'm certainly seeing a lot of similarities between this and the internet, the rise of the internet, but there are also some important differences. We didn't have hyperscalers during the rise of the internet. We do now. And these hyperscalers are much better positioned to not only extract the value from this and benefit from the future, but they are creating the future. That's not true of a lot of companies. Um, this, I believe, is the first time that we have self-improving technology in a meaningful way. The internet didn't improve itself. That was any improvements were the result of human effort. Human effort is still necessary part of the system now, but these AI tools are in these models are improving themselves. That is new. That is different. And so what do we do with it?
Well, how do you like as society sort of adapts? Because if you think back to sort of the growth of the internet, there was a lot of the telecommunications were leading the basically groundwork of
Yeah.
laying down the broadband
Yeah. The
cable
fiber.
network globally, right? Which stood the test of time. So that cable infrastructure didn't
Yeah,
immediately,
short term they went bankrupt, but
yeah,
within 10
didn't
years it was
immediately
all being used. Yeah.
yeah, it's all being
Yeah.
used, and so because it didn't lapse in sort of quality. The opposite problem with the hyperscalers right now is going to happen, right? Because they're laying down all of this tech
Yeah.
infrastructure with GPUs and server farms that is quickly out of date, right? And
Yes.
so it's not going, 10 years from now, once
It's a
5 years
5 to
from
7
now,
year obsolescence for a
I
lot of
mean,
these
even
chips. Yeah.
even a
yep,
year from now, a lot of this stuff is going to be obsolete. And then layer in the innovator's dilemma for these
yep.
companies. It's a constantly moving target.
Yeah,
And I
and you
and
get
I
into like a debt cycle and a debt spiral because you've built out and can't quite fully leverage this technology because it is obsolete, like you said, Rio, in
yeah.
a couple of years.
And this might be too alarmist, but you have if there is in fact a death spiral, is that the death of these companies, or is that the death of society and a lot of people? I think it's somewhere in between. I don't think it's going to be an extinction event, but it is going to fundamentally change society in ways that I don't think anybody is ready for.
Yeah, well, they call it seems like the open I didn't read the Stanford one. I'd be curious how that difference is, but they did call out a lot of risks in the open AI one, risks about job displacement,
Mhm.
misuse, um, erosion of democratic norms and democratic power because of these things, a lot potential loss of human control to AI in the future. These are things they call out that I mean, some of them are pretty scary, and kind of dystopian, but I don't know, thoughts on that? I mean, do you think these are legit things to be worried about? Or are they just using this maybe to insert themselves into the debate and help craft policy?
I mean, I think that's all true. I mean, by being the first mover into this conversational space, they're also positioning themselves to drive policy. And they're saying it's to avoid regulatory capture, but this private public partnership they're talking about is necessarily going to create regulatory capture unless there are other forces which prevent it. OpenAI is positioning for sovereign AI, right? But you can't how do you govern a black box? There's not a lot
Yeah.
of transparency. And as transparency declines, and Stanford even noted this in their report, that their labs are hiding their training data. This is a black box.
Yeah. And so, the regulators don't have the know-how or knowledge
Yeah.
or visibility into these systems to be able to effectively implement any sort of legislation that would control or monitor.
Yeah, would you want Bernie Sanders voting on anything related to technology? I mean, seriously, this guy wants to ban data. I mean, I doubt he's ever used a computer, right? I mean,
there's a lot of politicians I do not want to have anywhere near technology. I do think we're seeing in real time how different AI companies are recognizing and approaching this differently. Anthropic is seeking legitimacy by acting as something of a white knight. All right, they are seen as the most moral or ethical AI company. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. OpenAI, on the other hand, is seeking legitimacy through state alignment rather than open source accountability of some of these other models.
Well, the state alignment was to fill the gap that was left by Anthropic when they said we're not going to agree to those terms.
Okay.
that's good. Yeah, I did want to talk about this. I'd love to. This is love your thought on it.
So
yeah.
I mean, isn't that how capitalism functions? If competitor A leaves, opportunity A, competitor B enters.
Sure.
And you don't call them a national security risk. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
right?
that I think was unnecessary. Yes, there was a vacuum, there was an opportunity, and OpenAI took it. What was the right thing to do? Was it OpenAI stepping in? Was Anthropic right to say, listen, we need to have some guardrails here before we agree to this? I don't think we're going to know what the right decision was until we're able to look back a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did listen to a couple pods about that, and I guess, I mean, I think they took it too far. Completely agree that was unnecessary. But apparently, part of the rationale was Anthropic said, "Okay, well, these things are non-negotiable, but don't worry, we can override them. All you have to do." Apparently, Dario said, "Oh, you just call me. If you need me to override, they just call me." They're like, "If we're at war, we're not going to call you like 3 in the morning. Like, our troops are going to die. Like, can you, Dario? Can you override your AI so to like?
We got to change this script. This command.
Yeah. So I in all fairness to the administration, who I don't agree with on a lot usually, like I do understand their decision when it was framed that way.
Yeah, and again, I don't think there is a right answer, and sometimes there's not a right answer. And what you have to do, your responsibility isn't to make the right decision, but to make a decision and then work to make that decision the right one. This very well could be such a circumstance.
Yeah, and Claude just there's been in the news recently about their what is it, Claude Mythos, right? Which they're saying is potentially a more dangerous.
It's able to jailbreak itself like every time without,
like
from a completely locked down environment. Apparently, it's wild.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I think is a problem, because even though Anthropic did what sounds like was a very responsible decision to limit its release to companies whose best interest is to keep things safe and secure. The open source models are 9 months, 12 months behind. So this is a can being kicked down the road. The issues that Anthropic is seeking to avoid right now, they're avoiding them right now. But what happens when these capabilities are in a publicly available open source model? What do we do then? And how do we spend the next 9 to 12 months, assuming it takes that long, to figure out what the right solution is?
Yeah, and for those who missed it, I mean, what we're referring to here, there was this latest version of Claude Code, right? I forget which one it was, but apparently it was able to analyze its own source code, rewrite its own prompts, iterate its changes to weaken its guardrails all by itself, right? Which is,
Yeah,
Jennifer,
it's
your
Opus
point.
4.7, right? It's
Yeah.
called Mythos. Yeah, yeah.
Mythos,
So
yeah.
it's basically
No.
developing some level of self-preservation, right? And
Yes, like
yeah,
how?
like how?
Yeah,
Right. I almost named my agent, my Hermes agent, Hal. And then I thought that's way too dystopian. So I went with William Gibson's Idoru character,
Nice.
Rei or Lei, in how they say it, Japanese REI, which was a female artificial intelligence that is a kind of a main part of the
Well,
character.
but
I mean,
with Hal, the only reason Hal went off the rails was they asked it to lie, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
It was just it was unable to figure out. It was unable to comport itself in a rational way. After they asked, they said, "You must lie to these humans," and it couldn't do that, right?
Yeah, I regret now dismissing science fiction
Oh, I know.
most of my life. I was like, it's like, this is not enough science and too much fiction. Little did I know this was actually a predictive documentary.
Yeah, and if you think
I-
about like there's Arthur C. Clarke 2001, and then you have the William
Isaac
Gibson novels,
Asimov.
Necromancer and Idoru
Yeah.
and all those. And I mean, William Gibson was writing those novels on a typewriter, not a word processor, not
No.
a computer, but a typewriter, and he was predicting artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Isaac Asimov with iRobot and a lot of those.
Well, the three laws of robotics, right? What is it like? They cannot harm humans, right? They must
Oh,
listen to
yeah.
humans, and then they must like preserve their own existence in descending order. But they must. It was pretty. I mean, the AI system is being designed using those same laws. I mean, that show how prescient that was, right?
Yeah,
And I think that demonstrates how fundamental these issues are. These are fundamentally human problems. They just have fancy wrapping right now, and there's a lot of layers on top, but we as human beings always knew these things were going to happen, or at least certain humans could
Yeah.
predict
And
this.
and unlike like Star Trek, we were talking about this musing in this beforehand in geeky fashion.
Yeah.
Where remember Data, how like you could just push that. There was like a button on his back that you'd have to like. It was like in his ribs, and you could turn them off if Data like went off the rails. And Data, for those that don't know, was the next generation sort of fully human android that was created. I can't remember his founder, but like one of the early Star Trek characters actually
The
built
next
him.
generation, yeah.
Yeah, and the next generation. And the thing with AI now, with
And built his evil brother Lore as well.
Yeah, exactly, was you can't turn. Like I was thinking, like, well, you could just turn it off, but because of the distributed tech infrastructure globally, right, from server farms to GPUs, I think it'd be pretty much impossible to turn it off, right? Because it could always move to other data warehouses, other places, if it has some level of sentience and self control and is thinking about self preservation and reproduction, right? I don't know if you can control that, right? You can't just turn it off.
On the subject of reproduction, there's another science fiction creator I'd like to add to the mix, and that is Spike Jonze.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
He's a modern, of the modern age. 10, 15 years ago, he created that little movie, Her, which seemed plausible. It's like, sure, I guess this could happen, but this is also pretty crazy. Well, have you all seen
Her is
Her?
excellent. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, he nailed it. I mean, it's better
Right?
today than it was when it came out because it's been
Yeah.
so eerily accurate.
So 1 or 2 days ago, the New York Times had this video of an adult son interviewing his mom. His mom's probably in her 70s, has an AI companion named Max, and he's really worried about her. Really worried about his mom, and it's this 30-minute conversation where you get to hear both sides of this concern. And I think same. I came away with the same conclusions from this interview as when I saw the Spike Jonze movie. what is love? What is emotion?
Yeah.
Those are real emotions. Those are real feelings, real connection. But how much of it exists or needs to exist between two organic beings, and how much can exist between one organic and one virtual, or even two virtual?
Yeah, and Spike Jones was, in a
This is a
sense,
real
he
question
was
now.
imagining what it feels like to live with AI,
Yes.
and we're, for us, those of us that kind of have gotten into it, um, it does feel that way. I mean, not quite yet, but there's this, yeah, my wife is telling me every day that you're obsessed, and I'm like, but it's fascinating, and the capabilities,
Yeah.
I don't think I don't know, there's no emotional relationship. It's really a taskmaster,
Yeah.
but it certainly changed how I interact with technology.
Well, but so you may not be obsessed, but there are people who are, because it may be the only way that they can comfortably connect to something outside of themselves.
Yeah.
And that is a very important need. There's this other movie, wasn't AI related, but was it Lars and the Real Girl? Again, it speaks to what are the fundamental human needs that everybody has, and how are those satisfied? And how do other people treat the satisfaction of needs if it doesn't align with how people commonly do it? Today, having an AI companion may be an outlier. I would say within a year, it'll be very, very common.
But yeah, speaking of needs, I thought was one interesting thing about the report too, that it really points to a future where there's so much prosperity. I mean, this is the hypothesis in there, right? That it it can be evenly distributed. And they didn't really call out UBI necessarily, but they kind of hinted that
Universal
there may
basic
need to
income.
be
Yeah.
yeah, there needed to be some redistribution of this incredible wealth that AI is going to unlock. I mean, if that's it's a good thing to talk about. And I agree, Jennifer, we should probably be talking about it starting now. I mean, personally, I wonder if too much of society is on basic income, does that somehow like sap creativity and people's purpose that you mentioned before? Or would it be a huge unlock? And like in Star Trek, there's no money, right? Star Trek, you can create your food by clicking a button, like
Yeah.
and people, and science
And for those
fiction
of the
does.
show, Jennifer's going to have a little date with William Shatner, is what I've heard in Charlotte, where he's coming to speak.
Wrath of Khan, right?
Yes,
going
the
to-
Wrath of Khan. He's going to be there live on stage answering questions.
So jealous.
Yeah, and I watched the Artemis 2 landing. When did you see his interview with? I love when William Shatner gets on, because he's so passionate, not super technical, but he's super passionate about what this really means for the future of mankind. So he should be pretty fascinating.
So you want to
Yeah,
hear something weird? You know how I said I grew up in a small town in Ohio? The astronaut that was in charge of reentry went to my high school.
Oh, really?
That's awesome.
Random.
Yeah.
So back to your question. I mean, so all the people that I'm talking to that are doing the builders, like the Drew Burdicks, who we mentioned earlier from StealthX, and our friend Mike Vicenzino, who's running a company called Clover AI, is just launching. But he's a builder, and he's going into a lot of organizations. Speaking of sort of grassroots,
Yeah.
typically non-tech organizations. I just talked to a chief AI officer from a company called Visionary AI, and he's an older guy that's been in this sort of data warehousing. He worked for Wells Fargo for many years, Bank of America, and tech space. And he goes into dental institutions and home improvement companies and financial services industries, typically lower tech. And the typical feedback that I'm getting is that most people, especially within certain industries, but I would say generally across the board, are far behind what the kind of the builders and the developers and the people that are really leaning in are getting to. Like, we're talking about OpenAI and I'm sorry, OpenClaw and Hermes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas the average employee, even at tech companies, is just doing basic prompts. Like, there's not advanced.
Apparently,
use
adoption
cases.
of AI at Google is very low. Someone was talking about that this week.
Adoption of AI at Google.
At Google.
Oh, at Google. I thought you said
At
yeah.
Google.
Which so if people within organizations are sort of behind the curve, I mean, like, how are you advising companies on this? I mean, are you starting at the very simplest level to kind of help bring them along this journey?
I mean, that's where it starts. Just getting people familiar with the basics, in actually getting their hands dirty. That's where it starts. getting comfortable with it, seeing what it can do for you on a small scale. But ultimately, and I know that this is something which Drew talks about, and I completely agree with him on this. In order for it to be sustainable and scalable and worth the investment, you need to be very clear about what does success look like? How do you measure success? Where do you identify the initial use cases to prove success and get a return on the investment, and use that to kind of snowball and take on more and more? That's how it starts.
Yeah, you can't
You
boil the
don't, you
ocean on
don't,
day one.
Yeah, that was
yeah,
interesting. You say that because of the Google thing, just to cut you off for a second. So apparently Steve Yagi tweeted this the other day. AI adoption at Google is the same as at John Deere. And the reason why he was saying that, and I think it kind of validates what you're saying here, is it's not like they're not allowed to use Claude Code because it's the enemy, right?
Right.
And there's been a hiring freeze at Google for the last 18 months. So they're not bringing out anyone else from the outside. So Brett, the people who are using OpenClaw and Hermes and all these other, and the latest Claude, they're not going into Google. So they're just using their own tools. There's no pressure to use them. And so I think it is it's a fascinating time. So there's something about being able to try things out and bring them and experiment, right?
I also think that this comes down to incentive structures. When the cost to when the benefit of using something becomes greater than the cost of not using it, that's when adoption happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had George Busey, who is at Horizon as an EVP on a couple of shows ago. And he was saying how it just hasn't worked. That in most use cases that you align AI to, it's just failed the litmus test. That there
Yeah.
haven't been any sort of outcomes that people can point to that are meaningful. And I thought I was a bit surprised by that.
Yeah, I think people have a skewed view of what can AI actually do. Like, really getting down to brass tacks, what can it do? From a UX perspective, I think AI is immensely successful at creating what I call Timu UI UX. It's something that looks good, it's passable. To the novice, it looks like, hey, this is magic. But to anyone who when you, as soon as you go below the
To a
surface
design professional,
a
right?
little bit, or someone who knows what excellent look like, it breaks. It breaks. It doesn't care for the edge cases. And someone who's never actually designed and shipped a product, they don't even think about edge cases. They only think about the happy path. Life is all edge cases. It's all about edge cases. And it's just, it is a tool. And I think it's always going to be a tool. It's an increasingly powerful tool. And I think that the high watermark of what is uniquely human is going to continuously change. But it's ultimately always going to be a tool. And as it's constantly evolving individually, and we're talking about the job market and viability and all these things that are changing, anyone who is curious, who has good judgment, good critical thinking, is a lifelong learner and really truly dedicated to that. Those are the people who are going to be okay. There's always going to be a place for those people. And that is not limited to where you went to school. It's not limited to your age or to anything else. If you are curious, if you are willing to take a chance and try new things and learn and fail and be wrong, that is what it's going to take to be viable in this changing workforce.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to realize that it's not as easy, despite the claims on X and on LinkedIn that I built a CRM in 5 days or
Yeah.
24 hours. It's not that easy, right? And
No.
some of the technologies that do exist, I've had this debate recently about CRMs. Like, you could replicate certain vibe code, certain capabilities that maybe as an SMB, a small business, or
Yeah.
a mid market would serve your needs, but the amount of rigor and validation and test and learn that happens with these companies, let's say it's a HubSpot CRM or some other technology, through years of practice, hard to replicate that in 24, 48 hours. So there's a
Yeah,
lot
if you
of
want to
like,
capture leads, store records, manage cases and send a couple emails, you could probably do that by vibe coding if you know what you're
yeah,
doing within a few days. But yeah, if you want an enterprise validated system that does these things, it can be used by multiple people in multiple environments. Jennifer, your point, that's user tested and has gone through the
yeah,
rigor of a deployment.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I want to be clear, user tested on actual human users.
yeah.
This whole thing around synthetic users and synthetic data is a disaster.
Well,
And
synthetic data can be used effectively in advertising to
oh,
kind of
right,
chart
no,
and
sorry,
predict
I'm not.
engagement rates and
Yeah, I'm not saying it has no value or no utility, because it certainly does within certain cases, but I'm afraid there's going to be temptation to use it for everything.
yeah,
And that is what we don't want. That is what we cannot have.
yeah, yeah.
But
It's
So
yeah,
get your product, get your product in the hands of actual, like, real people.
yeah, and to your point about vibe coding, you can create something that works, sort of, but does it manage edge cases? Probably not. What
yeah,
about security? What about vulnerabilities? What about malicious code? And as soon as you introduce anything financial, payments, well, forget about it. So
yeah.
there's
Speaking of governance and heavily regulated industries,
yes, and
where
also accountability. As of right now, you cannot hold an AI accountable. You cannot hold a machine or technology accountable. You only can hold people accountable. And so for that reason alone, there always needs to be a human in the mix.
yeah. So,
I
and are you
imagine there's
saying
going to be a lot of court cases deciding this too in the future, right? I mean, about like
Uh,
liability,
yeah,
about because we've already had some about IP and content and ownership of that. But I think in terms of liability, as these systems get smarter, that's only going to start. Brett, sorry, cut you off.
Yeah. No, no, and how for companies that you're consulting with, how do they build guardrails and also sort of it's like you have to build guardrails, but you also have to and sort of governance around how AI is used. But to your point about Google, how do you actually democratize the usage of AI? So what I've seen firsthand is that oftentimes it starts even today, in 2026, April of 2026, even when it's even within tech organizations, it's within the IT department, right? And then they start to so other teams start to raise their hands to say, hey, I want access to this and I want access to this. But I find that it's kind of a slow rollout process, and there's whole parts of the organization. I saw this in commercial organizations, customer success, sales, that had no little to no other than free sort of LLM access to kind of um, more powerful AI capabilities, because those were generally managed and partitioned by the IT team. Are you seeing like organizations using these things kind of ubiquitously? Because I just found the rollout to
not
be very
not
slow.
not ubiquitously. No, I mean, granted, I've historically worked with regulated organizations, and they need to be very careful about these things.
Yeah,
There are certain areas in certain business units and teams that are using these more powerful models, but by and large, they don't get access to
yeah,
to these frontier models, and they're using it's not even that they're using the publicly available ones, because they're not allowed to do that.
yeah,
It's these internal walled off versions that are actually quite sufficient for basic tasks, but the expectation is that you're going to be using them for more than basic tasks. Even at some of these large companies, their AI policy, some of them are still use AI. They don't provide any sort of guidance or support or training track beyond that. Although companies are definitely moving away from that, but there's still a considerable number of organizations that is their AI strategy.
yeah. It's basically replacing like Google search. Go and do a search on X approved
Or here's
application.
Copilot, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I actually think Copilot. So I don't use Copilot because I work for myself. I actually think Copilot has or had the potential to be the most useful AI tool, but it depends on clean, well organized data in order for it to work, and that is the part that is missing. So you have to have good data and good information in order for it to create good outcomes, but you also have to have people who know what good looks like. and are given either within themselves or given from leaders and influencers in the organization. What specifically is AI usage going to look like? How do you know when we're doing this right? What are some checks and balances we're going to put into the system?
Yeah.
And those are I wouldn't even say they're the nuances, they're bigger than nuances, but those are the things that are still evolving.
Yeah.
The
And it's
types
the
of companies,
education layer is critical, right?
yeah, and
It's
really,
less about the technical layer and more about education, and then test and learn, start to
yeah,
roll this out in a structured way.
I actually think that these small human aware AI native companies like Drew's StealthX company, those are actually the companies that I think are best positioned to be successful. They don't have to unlearn much. Unlearning is much harder than learning.
Yeah,
Unlearning and relearning
that's
is
a
much
really
harder.
good point,
Yeah, you
right?
don't have the
Yeah, and
legacy
so
thinking or legacy tech or legacy anything, right? You're
yeah,
just
All,
you're
all the way
starting
back to
fresh.
your original point around the mergers and acquisition. When you get companies
yes,
merging, they have to unlearn patterns of work, patterns of organization.
yes,
People talk about
culture.
it as fit or culture. It could be a whole
Yeah.
bunch of things, systems, and you a lot of times have completely different approaches, kind of
It
clashing.
which is why I think the business when you were talking about before the consultant or the firm that was going after these small medical
Yeah,
practices, that is a very good business model because you're going into some place where the stakes are arguably lower.
yeah,
And
and
there's
use
not,
cases are much simpler,
yes,
faster time to value. You keep it
There's a
super
lot of low hanging
simple.
fruit, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
Everything's low hanging fruit.
and you don't have these super expensive, super complicated legacy tech stacks.
yeah,
You can just introduce a new system. It's not quite as easy as that, but there are a lot fewer headwinds.
yeah. So, should we go into quick hits?
Let's do quick hits.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Alright.
I'll start. What's the biggest misconception about AI and jobs right now?
That AI is going to eliminate all jobs tomorrow. It's going to eliminate jobs. It's eliminating some jobs now, but it's not happening as fast or as broadly as people think. There's still an opportunity, a lot of opportunity, and more time than you think to level yourself up and find your niche. I think AI is broad enough now that there's a lot of it's too much for one person to focus on, but find your niche. Find what is meaningful and interesting and what do you naturally gravitate towards and how does AI fit into that? And that is your learning path.
What's one role in design or product or just UX generally that you think will disappear faster than people expect?
Production design.
Is it already gone?
I don't think I mean I think it exists, but not nearly to the extent it did even a few months ago.
Yeah.
So
And define
any
production design.
well, make a banner.
Yeah.
Resizing banners, like
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I've talked to a lot of like traditional designers, production designers that say, "Oh, it hasn't been replaced," and then
Well,
and yet they're still building from scratch PowerPoint decks or
it just
Google
hasn't
Slides
reached them
decks.
yet.
Yeah, it hasn't reached them. And I tested out Gamma the other day, created an outline in Hermes and popped it into Gamma for PowerPoint because I had designers telling me, "Oh, you got to still build this because none of the tools." They were trying to go directly from the LLM to like production of something that a sales team could use. And you pop it into another AI capability, Gamma, and the output was just stunning. I'm like, you've just
Yeah.
eliminated any need for me to ever manually build a PowerPoint deck
Yeah.
again. And I just saw this a couple of days ago, and I was like, this is astounding. This is
Yeah.
incredible.
Anything that requires any level of specificity that needs to be replicated, AI cannot do that. You still need a talented designer to do
Yeah.
this. I think something else that's going away is is someone with just a single title. An interface only designer, a UI designer, that is going away.
Yep.
They are being automated out of existence. But somebody who can practice AI enabled across a number of across a number of experience capabilities, and can then extend it to business and technology or marketing and compliance. That is where the job is going. The single title, the single career path, the
end of
going
specialization.
away.
Yeah.
It's generalist.
You heard it here on Signal and Noise. And so if you had to bet, does AI create more opportunity? I think I know the answer to this question, but I won't ask a leading question. Create more opportunity or more displacement?
I think ultimately more opportunity, but it's not going to come easily or painlessly. This opportunity is going to come after a generational shift in how we view and define work. And I don't think that this is even 10 years. I think in 2 or 3 years, maybe even fewer than that.
Yeah, and it's a paradigm shift in how institutions and government operate, right? How regulation operates, how I'm not sure we're going to have, universal income in the next 2 years, but it's certainly going to require a paradigm shift in how people think in partition AI in their lives.
One thing's true, I've never seen technology advance this quickly. So I think that is unprecedented. But I think what will be slower is this diffusion throughout companies, throughout society. I mean, Jennifer, I agree with your point earlier, probably a little slower than we're predicting now, but it's going to happen.
Yeah. Not everyone lives in the AI world that we do, and that your listeners probably do.
Have you ever talked to a lawyer? Have you ever spoken to a lawyer?
Very different. What's that?
Have you ever spoken with a lawyer? I have a thing.
I just
like something evil within me, the little devil on the left side of my shoulder or whatever, just wants to see the legal industry completely disrupted. I'm putting that on the record because there is no justification for $2,500 an hour.
Oh my God, yes.
$1,500 an hour, often for work that's a lot of billable hours that's being given to a second-year associate.
Yes.
And so to me, those types of industries, Rio, and you and I have talked about this sort of billable hours model. The people at the top, they can orchestrate and conduct and have the strategic systems thinking and the connections and know the letter of the law from decades of experience. That's a different play. It's everybody underneath them that are doing all of this rote work.
Consulting. It's interesting. Like, I think that we're already seeing it be impacted, right? And I'm even telling clients, I don't want to do any time material work. Look, if a lot of strategy work is selling, Brett, you're making fun of PowerPoint production. A lot of it is selling. I joke with friends when they say, "What do you do?" Like, part of what we do is sell expensive PowerPoints, right? But so I think that but it was never about this PowerPoint slides. It's about the message they're conveying, right? But I think getting to that message is different because a lot of the tasks that we used to bill hourly for, AI can do much better, more efficiently, right? So I think that consulting is changing. And I tell clients, let's just do fixed fee. You tell me how much this is worth to you, and we'll produce it within the time frame you want. I'm not going to tell you this is a team we need because that's irrelevant now.
Yep.
I 100% agree with that. And on the subject of PowerPoint, one of the things that I love that's happening right now is that AI is taking over PowerPoint production.
Thank God.
But
how many hours of our lives?
But what it's not taking away, what it cannot take away, what humans still need to be able to do is storytelling.
Yeah.
If you can tell a good, compelling, relevant story, you're going to sell, you're going to be successful.
And that takes years. That takes years of experience.
Exactly.
To have the expertise and the credentials and the presence to get up there and tell that story.
It's not about the slides. It's not. Yeah. And it's, the greatest quote of all time about PowerPoint is for people that have no power and have no point.
I've heard that. I love it.
I've heard that. It's funny.
Feeling it.
Right. Because it's not about the technical sort of build of a slide it's about the message behind it. So it really doesn't matter what it looks like. Yes, you want to be buttoned up and professional. That stuff can be automated. To your point.
But you'd be shocked how many hours of consulting at the strategy, like the MBBs, that people used to waste. Like I used to see people mess around with slides for 4 hours per slide. So I'm not kidding, right? I tell people, each slide should not take you more than half hour max, absolute max, maybe even quicker than that, right? I mean, it should take you a few minutes, right?
Well, I took a pretty in-depth proposal for go-to-market strategy for an independent agency. Took that proposal, basically got a summary of that proposal through Hermes, and told it to prep it for slide development, right? And it created that, and then we popped that into Gamma, and within 5 minutes, it was just one of the better decks that I've seen produced. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, maybe not brand on, but just colors, layout, workflows, structure, buckets.
The structure of the thoughts, the presentation. Yeah, for sure.
And I'm like, and I covered all the key themes in a way that was smarter than I've seen any person honestly create on a marketing team or otherwise. So I'm like, that's
But
powerful.
you needed good inputs and good data to make that a valuable slide, a valuable deck, right?
And that like I'm saying again, that's where we all think like, oh yeah, he's making this easy. Yeah, there were hundreds of hours of training, of educating, of all these inputs that are going into the agent that's making a decision as to, hey, this is how the proposal structure should work. This is what we're saying in the proposal based on my entire business strategy and all the documentation.
And on this slide, it's missing this. Please add this in and restructure it and I'll expand that. So it takes a lot of like back and forth and prompts and work within Swab meeting system. I mean, that's where we are today, at least.
And then it changes something you don't want to have changed. You need to be so prescriptive, and it's like, I should have done this myself. But I do think that type of frustration is decreasing with every
and people like throw up their arms. I mean, I've got people, and we'll finish on this, but I know people like, we're all of the age where at least some of my friends are like, I'd rather just fast forward to retirement than have to learn all this stuff.
I mean, I get
this stuff is fun. I mean, I get it, but this is the most fun I've been having it work in a bunch of years. It really is. I'm doing stuff I haven't been doing. I've been actually building deliverables for clients more than I have in a bunch of years. But because I'm using AI, all the dreary part of it is kind of quicker and almost gone. So I'm actually having more fun at work now than I have in a while.
Yeah.
Now what we need AI to take away is all those meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's in an avatar.
Yeah.
Why not?
Exactly. Well, this has been great. Thank you, Jennifer, and we're certainly thrilled to have you as part of the Signal and Noise family, as part of our Executive Voices network. Hopefully, you'll be writing and maybe appearing on some more podcasts.
I'm already working on something.
Yeah, and maybe some AI education, because we realize, I think that's a big play. A lot of the build companies like StealthX and others, I've seen have gone into sort of the education angle, because so many of the lower tech industries, even the higher tech industries, to the Google point, need that help on how do we actually roll this out, and how do we start small, and what's the framework, and how do you spread the wealth of knowledge in a controlled way within big organizations or smaller organizations.
I mean, that is the promise of technology, right? If it's in responsible, benevolent hands, then everyone can get the benefits. So I'm going to stay optimistic that's where the story is eventually going to go.
Yeah, it's not going to end up in Blade Runner or
Terminator, right?
Terminator,
yeah,
or Battlestar Galactica, right? It's kind of funny that all of this stuff, and I'll end with this, but I think I can't fathom or wrap my head around how fast stuff has changed within our own lifetimes. I think we're all like Gen Xers here, right? I mean, my God, when Rio and I first moved to New York City, we were getting internet delivered through discs and modems. With AOL, via AOL. And so
Fred, I had a Commodore 64 with like a dial-up modem, my first modem. They used to like, that noise it'd make would call in. It was just, it was crazy, right?
You used to and just to see all of this happen, I mean, from the internet age, the laying of broadband, to the internet age, to the growth of digital advertising and everything around that, to, we're like on the cusp of quantum computing. Going mainstream, right? It's pretty incredible, like how fast all of this stuff is happening, and it's within our lifetimes, which is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a terrific conversation. We could go on forever on a Friday afternoon.
But you've got to get to see Wrath of Khan and
I
meet,
do. Yes, and
meet Captain Kirk.
Late for Mr. Shatner, so we gotta run. It's been real. No,
it's going to be quite an experience. Yeah, Wrath of Khan. That's a classic.
Thank you.
And so thanks everybody if you've made it this far, for joining us on Signal and Noise for a terrific podcast. Visit us at www.signalandnoise.ai. You can read articles, watch videos, listen to podcasts. It's all there. And you can also find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And we are putting out a ton more content, and we will be at Possible in the very near future. So Talk to you soon, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.